Habib Omar said, praises for Allah, Lord of the worlds, and blessings and peace and mercy upon our Master Muhammad and his folk and companions, all of those who follow them in excellence until the day of recompense. Habib said to proceed. We're continuing our weekly lesson in reading in the book Beneficial Counsels by Imam Haddad, in those things that will benefit us in our traveling to our Master and our journey to our Creator, the one who called us to Himself on the tongue of His Prophet, and we reached His saying, Allah have mercy upon him, and I advise you to be avid in seeking beneficial knowledge by reading, studying, reviewing, and acquisition of that knowledge, which he'll describe in more detail. So in this counsel, he advised seeking beneficial knowledge, and beneficial knowledge is that which increases one in knowledge of Allah and knowledge of His rulings or laws, and aids in purifying the soul and cleansing it and removing it from impurities, and gives one insight into avoiding spiritual misfortunes and harm. This beneficial knowledge is hikmah, is wisdom, and this is a position of the most soundest positions of the explanation of the saying of Allah. He gives wisdom, He gives hikmah to those whom He wills, and the one who is given hikmah is given great good. So a sound position of the soundest positions is that's beneficial knowledge. Beneficial knowledge is everything that aids one to apply Allah's command well on the earth and to implement Allah's way and establish it among humanity. Beneficial knowledge is that which increases one in faith and pious deeds, and being purified from types of spiritual filth and avoiding all types of evil. Its beginning and basis is what has come, or its basis and foundation is what has come in the noble Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Imams of the companions, their followers in excellence until the day of rising. And then all information and knowledge of anything in existence, if it is governed by this knowledge that has come from Allah and His Messenger and is used in the service of the objectives that beneficial knowledge called us to, then to that extent it is beneficial. And to the extent that it opposes Allah's way and swerves from His path, there's no benefit in it, even no matter how much the egos incline to it and how much wealth is amassed for it. For verily verily benefit in the intellect of the believer, and when it's on the balance of the believer, which is the scale that the Quran brought, benefit is that which led to attaining degrees and realizing those things that would cause salvation. And there's no benefit in that thing, those things to which the ego inclines and greeds for, and their result is after that distance from Allah or punishment that a person receives, that befalls a person in this world and in the hereafter. So then here there is a scale to comprehend that which is true benefit and that which is salvation or felicity and that which is honor and that which is elevation, and we cannot neglect or repudiate this balance. Allah's Messenger brought it. Allah said, verily we sent the Messenger with the clear proofs, and He revealed the book and the scale that people can establish equity. So everything that swerves from equity and justice to transgression and oppression, it is due to neglecting this balance, the scale. And if this scale is established, people will be equitable. This beneficial knowledge, we must be avid to acquire it. So everyone who is able to attain it in the various ways that the Imam mentioned, he should seek knowledge by reading it, and that consists of reading the books of the firmly grounded scholars, those who are sincere, solely seeking Allah's countenance, and also listening to recordings or following websites that exist now on the internet. That is considered reading, beneficial knowledge, if you will. Qira'ah. He said, however, reading among those who have a portion of knowledge, meaning studying the book with them, that bears more fruit and is of more benefit, and that is things like studying at the hands of the sheikhs. He said, however, seeking knowledge with any of the means that were mentioned, we should not waste our time in studying things that do not relate to beneficial knowledge. And then he said studying, and then he said reviewing between students and between the learned. So seeking knowledge and reviewing it is very effective. And they say writing 2 lines is better than reading a book or listening to it without writing. And memorizing 2 lines is better than writing 2 volumes without memorization. And the reviewing between 2 is better than those 2. So better than memorizing or writing. A poet said, if someone attains knowledge and reviews it, his world and the next will be good. And so continue reviewing your knowledge, because the life of knowledge is through review, or you could say repetition. So one's memorization is corrected and strengthened by repetition, and life is given to knowledge by reviewing it much and studying it much among students as well as among the possessors of knowledge.
This researcher, he said that's through receiving it or acquisition, talaqqi, at the hands of the sheikhs, of the learned. And he said, so when beneficial books would come, the student would study that book from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, phrase by phrase, word by word, at the hands of the sheikh, and then that would become clarified by the sheikh, and the sheikh would comment on those things that needed it and those things that needed him to point his attention to something or needed an increase in explanation. So that is the means of acquisition, of talaqqi, receiving knowledge. And he said, so one must set aside some free time, or time, free oneself up to study that for a period of time, particularly with a sheikh that has an aptitude and a chain of transmission to Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah's mercy, Imam al-Haddad says, Allah's mercy be upon him, never allow laziness and boredom to cause you to stop seeking it. What this means is, whenever laziness comes to you or boredom overcomes you, then correct this by calling to mind the reward and the station with Allah, and also by encouraging your ego, trying to give it energy by the various means, and do not respond to the demands of boredom. And he said, do not, nor the fear that you will not act upon it, for that is a type of foolishness. He said, so don't obey your ego if it feels lazy. However, have insight or seek insight into a means to renew its energy and resolve and aspiration with the various means of that. From the foremost of these means of renewing one's aspiration is remembering the reward and remembering a station with the Lord of Lords and the reward that He has promised for this in the place of return and the hereafter. And from the means of giving oneself energy is seeking aid with one's brethren, or by reviving oneself by some sort of physical activity, or reviving oneself by eating or drinking, those things that can encourage one or stimulate one. And also, don't let fear that you want to act upon you cause you to leave this knowledge, because that's a type of foolishness or ignorance. He said that is one of the tricks that the shaitan, that the devil plays on many people to prevent them from seeking knowledge. That he prevents them from seeking knowledge by trying to make the argument that you won't act upon it, so it's better that you not learn it. And that is a deception, and that is a trick from Allah's enemy to prevent you from good. Rather, you should seek knowledge and have a resolve to act according to it, and then whenever you're able to, you will attain the reward of acting. And to the extent that you're not able to, or it's not easy, you have the intention, the reward of your good intention that you would act, you would have been able to, and also you'll have the reward of acquiring knowledge. He said, so never allow laziness and boredom to cause you to stop seeking it, nor the fear that you will not act upon it, for that is a type of foolishness, or you could say ignorance, meaning a trick that the devil plays upon those who are ignorant to prevent them for that in which there is good and their betterment. And he alerted them to a fundamental of this knowledge through which success occurs, and that is his saying, it is incumbent upon you. You are required to correct your intention in seeking knowledge, scrutinize your ego, and seek out its real motives, and make its intention upright and right, that it is only seeking Allah's pleasure and seeking His countenance, and making an aspiration to Him, obeying His command and following His Prophet. So you are required to correct your intention and to scrutinize your nafs, your ego, in that regard. Meaning that you're not satisfied with its claim that it's sincere, the ego's claim that it's sincere. He said, so you have to still inspect your intention, or inspect your intention, because various things may overcome the intention and cause it to change from time to time. He said, so then make your intention on a firm foundation of sincerity and seeking Allah's countenance, and then do not neglect to scrutinize and take the ego to account in that regard, and being alert to that which would overcome it of an aspiration or an aim for other than Allah, and do not accept its claims. Do not be convinced by its claims until you test it, or you try it and force it. Charge it with having to act. You charge your ego to act upon what it has learned, even if you only act upon part of it. And also you're teaching it to those who do not know that knowledge. He said, so charge it, command it to teach it to those who do not know it, and also to act upon it. Whether it was asked or not, meaning whether you were asked or not. Whether you are not, so be avid to teach, to spread knowledge among the believers, something that was beneficial to all of them, spread it among all of them. Be avid to spread knowledge, to give benefit, for indeed, in accordance to the amount that you are avid to give benefit, you will be benefited by Allah, and you will receive aid from Allah, and Allah will pour blessings upon you and bless your knowledge. So be avid to teach those who do not know, even if you are not asked. Take an opportunity anytime you sit, anytime you walk with someone, any journey in which you accompany someone, any banquet that you attend, any time you're with a group of people, take an opportunity. If you see any knowledge, teach it in a way that's good, with an appropriate delivery that is befitting of the gathering in which you're in, or the circumstance in which you find yourself. And don't listen to the shaitan if he says, do not teach until you become a scholar. How can you teach people? Your knowledge is limited. He said, then say this to him. So if the devil whispers to you like this answer is here from the people of clarification and knowledge. What's the answer? Say, in regards to what I have learned, I am knowledgeable of that, therefore it is an obligation for me to teach it to others. As for those things which I do not know, I am a student and it is obligatory for me to learn. He said, so why should I leave the obligation in what I have learned by the proof of the other obligation that I'm performing? He said, so I perform this obligation and that obligation. According to what I know, I'm learned to the extent that I know. So I have in that the responsibility to teach. And with respect to those things as I don't know, I'm a student. And I have the obligation to perform the task of learning. So I do not claim knowledge of everything, nor vast knowledge when I don't have vast knowledge. Nor do I ever stop asking others. And I don't stop saying, I don't know if I don't know something. When I say about something I don't know, I don't know. However, those things that I have learned, I am obliged to teach them. And the learned have said, if someone is knowledgeable of a question, they are learned with respect to that question, and they are responsible, they have the same responsibility as a scholar in that question that they have known. And if the shaitan says to you, do not teach until you become a scholar, then say, in regards to what I have learned, I am knowledgeable. It is an obligation for me to teach it. As for those things that I do not know, I am a student, it is obligatory for me to learn them. He goes on to say, this is in regard to obligatory knowledge. He said, everything beyond that which is obligatory, that is a great act which brings one nearer to Allah if the intention is sound. And he said, so there is no excuse to leave learning or teaching to the extent one is able in obligatory knowledge. That is taught by the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. This obligation, no one has an excuse to neglect it, whether in learning or teaching. That what is beyond that of the knowledges of the sacred law, learning it and teaching it are from those acts which bring one near Allah. They're acts of obedience that bring one near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's from the great acts which bring one near to Allah if the intention is sincere. So can the Imam Haddad give us an example of a good intention? He said its soundness, or one's intention is sound, and its soundness is based on the intention being confined to desiring the countenance of Allah, the exalted, and the abode of the hereafter, and not for other things like status and wealth. Imam al-Haddad said in some of his poems, and take from the sciences of the sacred law or the sciences of the religion a vast portion, and you will be felicitous in that, in this world and in the day of resurrection. And Imam Haddad, he said, and strive in seeking knowledge with effort and working hard. And in knowledge there is a light for the heart, and its splendor, and it brings the servant in the hereafter in the best way. Through this he knows the rights of his God. Through knowledge a person knows the rights of God. And if you wish to memorize what you have known, that is through repeating one's lesson and going over it again and again. So he gave us the advice to be avid to seek knowledge both in reading, studying, reviewing, and acquisition, and that one not neglect it due to laziness, boredom, or fear of not acting. And he mentioned that we should have an intention in seeking knowledge, and we scrutinize it and not be convinced by the false claims of the ego, and that we do not neglect acting on our knowledge or teaching it to those who do not know. And if the whispering of the devil comes and says you're yet to be a scholar, so how can you teach? The answer is that with respect to I know, I am learned and I must teach, and with respect to that which I am ignorant of, I must learn. He said this is pertaining to obligatory knowledge, and beyond that, knowledge of the sacred law and teaching it is from the greatest of acts which bring one near to Allah. However, if the intention is sincere, and the sincerity of intention is that it be limited to seeking the noble countenance of Allah and the abode of the hereafter. And then after this, he indicated a pillar of the pillars of beneficial knowledge. The author said, it is also incumbent upon you to regularly read the books of the folk, al-qawm. And when the people of this discipline say al-qawm, the folk, they intend the people of an aspiration to Allah Ta'ala, who have been purified from impurities and ascended degrees, of the people of ihsan, of spiritual excellence, who have ascended the ladders of Islam and Iman to ihsan, and they are known as the Sufis. He said, so you must regularly read the books of the people, or the folk, translated also as the community, al-qawm, the people of soft hearts, people of spiritual realities, people of spiritual tastes, and their breasts are light, and they enlighten your hearts, and by reading their books, much darkness is removed from your heart, and light comes to your heart. Radiant lights come to your heart, and through this your inner sight will be clarified. So through reading their books, there is a strong effect in having a connection to them, and that is an aid in being realized in traveling along their path. If you are true to the extent that you drink from their drink, so do not neglect to study the books of the folk, like Al-Harith Al-Muhasibi and Sayyidina Abu Talib Al-Makki, Sayyidina Al-Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali, and Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani, Sayyidina and also Sheikh Abdul Wahhab Al-Sha'rani, and Sayyidina Abdullah bin Alawi Al-Haddad, the author, and Ibn Ata'illah Al-Sakandari, and the Qushayri's treatise, and the likes of those books of the pious and the knowers of Allah. Those are the books of the folk, al-qawm. He said, you must repeatedly read the books of the folk. He said, why did you counsel us to do this? He said, and he also said, and reflect upon them, for in them is guidance to the elect knowledge of Allah. In them is a guidance for the elect knowledge of Allah, and direction to rectifying one's intention and making one's deeds sincere, and refinement or purification of the soul. And other types of beneficial knowledge carry and lead one towards victory and success. So they carry one, or you could say drive one, and lead one towards victory and success. He said, so you have a driver from behind you and an imam from in front of you leading you to good, because these are summaries that proceeded from the hearts of the chosen, of the elect, the abstinent, the sincere, the scrupulous of the people of this ummah. So they are the summary of being affected by the lights of revelation and applying it well. This light proceeded from those hearts that remained in the presence of Allah and sincere and true to Him. So, and these books proceeded from souls like that. So how beneficial they were, and how many hearts have they softened, and how many difficulties have they alleviated, how many breasts have they expanded, how much did they ease spiritual traveling and passage, and how much did they increase faith, and how many people through this were saved from the plotting of the ego and the devil. he said, for verily in them, meaning the people of the folk, the books of the folk, is guidance to elect knowledge of Allah, correcting one's intention, and refining the souls. And these lead and drive one to victory or triumph and success. No one refrains from reading this and studying these books except one whose inner sight is blinded and whose inner secret is dimmed. And he said this was a deception. A deception has occurred to the ummah, and that they have now they waste their time by studying the books of those who are corrupt, those who are fallen down, and those who have no value or station with Allah, those who have no portion with Allah and in the abode of the hereafter. So the ummah has been busied with the books of those who are heedless, and newspapers and magazines and all of these things, and no time remains for the books of those who are true, the people of Allah, who are those books that are high and elevated, and that is giving that which is better in exchange for that which is worse. He goes on to say, if your time is limited and you do not have enough time to read them in general, then choose from the books of Imam al-Ghazali, for they are most beneficial, comprehensive, and exceptional. They clarify well, unveil the spiritual realities, guide to the Creator, and they also mention the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger, and the way of the pious predecessors. And he said, so take the books of Imam al-Ghazali, for they are from the most beneficial, comprehensive, and exceptional. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the effect near or easily attainable for those who read the books of Imam al-Ghazali and also the books of Imam Haddad. So them, how much did Allah give benefit through their books and guide people through the means of them? May Allah give us benefit and make us act according to the way that is straight and upright and well-pleasing to Allah, and may Allah give our aim, action and intention good, make those good, and care for us in everything, every affair that is outward, inward, or hidden, and may Allah not turn us over to our own egos or any of His creatures for the twinkling of an eye. Indeed, He is the most merciful, the merciful, generous of the generous, and Him we seek aid and depend upon Him, and we direct ourselves to Allah, and we depend upon Him, and Him we seek. We ask Him to make us from the elect of those who have believed and perform good deeds and counsel mutually in truth and patience. And now we will answer the questions that have come. There's a brother named Suhaib from Tunis. May Allah gaze to him with the eye of His concern and rectify for him their land and our land and the lands of the Muslim. So he says, how can a murid have guidance and direction from Allah in all times, and he loves a group of people and he's not acted or according to the ways or caught up with them? He said he must be sincere and true to Allah and follow them to the extent that he's able, and mention them and pray for them. These are means for Allah to place him in the hearts of those people. And if someone enters the heart of a knower of Allah, the lights of types of spiritual knowledge come over him. Whenever rain falls in a place, its spray splashes around that place. So when light pours upon the heart of a knower of Allah, if someone is in the heart of that knower of Allah, then the sprinkling of that downpour sprinkles upon that one who is in his heart. And those gifts from Ar-Rahman, and he said, so be avid that you're in the heart of a knower of Allah. And he said, however, our means to this is that we make them in our heart, and we love them for the sake of our Lord and the one we love, and we emulate them, and we study their accounts and their behavior and their virtues, and we force ourselves to emulate them, and we ask Allah to grant us more than we hope, from His beneficence. All of these are causes of Allah placing us within their hearts. And the knowers of Allah used to say, the sign of your loving Allah is your loving the awliya, the friends of Allah. And the sign of Allah's love for you is the love of His awliya for you. So if He loves you, His awliya will love you. And if you love Him, you will love His awliya. And this is a brother named Khalid from Yemen. He said he has a wird that he does in the morning and the evening to perform the obligation of Hajj. Can I keep doing this wird during excuse me. He says a wird that he does, and he's going to do Hajj. He said, can he do his wird during Hajj? He said, do your wirds to the extent that you can. He said, however, if you're distracted from your wird by the rites of the Hajj, then that you're excused in delaying it, and then if you're able to make it up, that's more perfect. Otherwise, Hajj takes precedence, and then in your extra time and your free time, perform the awrad, the regular devotions that you are accustomed to the extent that your time permits. May Allah make us of those who continually do good, following our Prophet, whose action was persistent. If he performed an action, he would continue to do it. And he said to us, the most beloved of works to Allah is the one that is most constant. So this brother from Britannia, he said, what is the beginning of the path to Allah? And is there an end to this path, and how do we reach it? He said, no, that the beginning of the path is faith in Allah, and acting according to the dictates of faith, and performing pious deeds, amal salih. So the beginning of the path to Allah Ta'ala is it's an inward matter that has an outward manifestation. The inward matter is guidance from Allah. It's a drive being stirred within the heart of the human being that causes him to truly reflect on the obligation of traveling to Allah, Al-Ali Al-Kabir, and being wary of being cut off from that and focusing on Allah and turning away from other things. This drive. And the first thing that this causes in a person is his making true repentance from sins and acts of disobedience and seeking beneficial knowledge and acting according to it. He said, so then the beginning of the journey to Allah Ta'ala is a drive that is cast into the heart and is a true repentance, true return to Ar-Rahman. And then if the person acts according to this, he said, then this path will bring him from a general knowledge of Allah to an elect or special knowledge of Allah. And the first footstep in this path is that one's outward and inward life be equal. Or this private and public life. And then he continues to ascend. And he said, however, even if those who are advanced, they say they've reached the end, they never reach an end, because the one to whom they're traveling, his attributes are unlimited, his beneficence is unlimited, and his names have no limit. So they always ascend forever, eternally, without any limit. And he said, and what is the meaning of the spiritual path of Al-Ba'alawi, Tariqat Al-Ba'alawi? And that what does it mean that it's inwardly Ghazali and outwardly Shadili? He said the various spiritual paths and the types of the spiritual paths, they return to a foundation that's either Shadili or Ghazali. And the Shadili foundation is establishing the station of gratitude, shukr. And the focus in it of striving is on the inward, on the heart, on vision of the favor of the one who gives it, and remaining in his presence, and cutting oneself off, devoting oneself entirely for him. and there's not abundant outward striving or vast outward knowledge necessarily. And the Ghazalian path, there's a concern for knowledge and establishing outward knowledge and striving to purify them, and then that leading to persistent pleasure with Allah, which was the objective of the Shadhalis in the beginning. So the end of the two paths is the same. However, you can join between the two, and that is how the path of Al-Ba'alawi is. Along with their concern for outward knowledge and acting according to it, and striving physically in works, they establish their hearts in the prayer niches of gratitude and persistent presence with Allah. So they combine these two works and these two paths. So they say their path is outwardly Ghazali and inwardly Shadhili. So they're concerned with knowledge and action outwardly, and inwardly they're Shadhili, stripping everything away and being true in monotheism and being gratitude and aspiring to Him in gratitude for His favor. And there's a sister who asked from Australia. She said, I'm avid to worship and pray in the night. And he said, and I have a total desire to do so. And I set my alarm clock. And he said, however, I've not been present at the time of the end of the night, Sahar, the very end of the night. So how do I overcome my nafs? And he said, as for standing the night in prayer, by persisting in a resolve and being avid and using the various means, both inward means along with the outward means. So outward means are like an alarm clock or making an agreement with a friend to wake you up. He said someone who's there, or by having someone call you or something else. And inward means are saying istighfar at the end of the night, just before Maghrib. So saying astaghfirullah before the sunset. And giving life to what is between Maghrib and Isha with acts of goodness. And also doing the Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar that the Prophet ﷺ taught Fatima Ali. And also reciting the end of Surah Al-Kahf from the saying of Allah, Inna alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati, to the end of the Surah Al-Kahf. Inna alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati kanat lahum jannah, to the end of the Surah. And he said, and then she also said, I feel, no, he said that
فرض ما فرض على الطاهرة هو الذي حرم ما حرم على الحائض فحينئذ جماعها عبادة.
He said that she's explaining to her the benefit of a woman leaving prayer and Quran when she's menstruating. He said that just as she's rewarding for performing it when she's pure, she's rewarded for abstaining from it when she is menstruating. So she should remember that the menstrual cycle happened to the best of the women of Bani Adam. And it is nothing other than
اتصال بما كان لأهل المراتب العلى فإذا
he said, so people of the highest stations had this menstruation. So there's no harm there or any weakness or lowliness in that. And there's a brother who asked from Britannia, Fuksha, so he asked a question about patience. And he said, patience is only praiseworthy in a cause of ascension. So being patient with one state, it doesn't mean that you neglect the means that would raise one to a better state. So that's not the mean of being patient in the states. He said, leaving the means is lagging and weakness, lagging, laziness, and cowardice. He said, as for patience or steadfastness, as-sabru, he said that you're looking at the commands that you have and you remain steadfast in you striving your utmost in performing it well and properly. And then you look at the alhamdulillah, yarhamakallah. And he said, and also avoid being patient in avoiding anything that has been prohibited. And then you look at the various circumstances that occur. If one of them is difficult and severe, and you're not able to avert it, then you be patient with that difficulty. And it's not patience to approve of anyone humiliating a Muslim in front of you and you're able to defend them, and or not watching anyone oppress someone and you say that we're patient and you're able to fend them off and defend them. And it's also not patience to be satisfied with a low state when you're rather than ascending to a high state. So patience, as-sabru, is never blameworthy, again, as is defined by the sacred law. And Allah said, verily only those who have patience are given the reward without measure. And He said, so you should be patient and anxious when something occurs that you're not able to avert it, but rather you surrender to Allah's command and fulfill your obligation with respect to this thing that has occurred. And what is the meaning of being satisfied with Allah's decree? Is that you don't neglect what you're able to do, and you do not object to anything that He has decreed. And a brother named Suhaib said, who's from Tunis, so this questioner said he fears in that what he learns that he be deluded and not act according to what he has conveyed others. And he said, what's that? That you obey the command of Allah and His Messenger, and then and also you teach. And part of acting on the knowledge that you've learned is teaching it. And then also you should dislike any delusion, ostentation, or vainglory or pride that you have, and that you strive to be pure from that. He said, if you leave teaching altogether, you will then become vainglorious and deluded by a subtle type of vainglory. And maybe the shaitan, he will use those who leave good by supposing that they fear from themselves vainglory. Maybe they'll think that they're better than those who did those good works. And then so they might even have an evil opinion of someone else. So this person will be thrown into misfortune from where they did not know. However, the elect, they act out of obedience to Allah's command and then dislike every evil thought and reject it. And they seek the aid of Allah, and He will take you by the hand. And maybe you will not know, you'll be unaware, and He will cause you to ascend and unveil and remove from you every harm, as He has done to those who have remained in a state of worship and remained at His doorstep. May Allah make us and you from the people of His presence. And here's a brother from Britannia. He said, it's difficult for me to oppose my evil self. And he said, by inner sight in striving against it. And how do I overcome its excuses? He said, you do not let it do what it is accustomed to, and then you give it a portion of being hard on it sometimes, and then give it some of what it needs or what it loves at another time. He said, so basically using diplomacy, working it hard sometimes and giving it some of what it needs or likes other times. And he said, and that is difficult, and it is only done with inner sight. However, through that one will overcome the evil and the tricks of the ego, the nafs. And no matter how difficult the nafs is, Allah's power is greater. And what is your ego, your nafs, or anything and everything else in comparison to Allah? So seek refuge in Him and oppose the ego and oppose its caprice, and seek refuge in Him well. return to him and seeking refuge, and be hard on it at times, and give it some of what it needs others. And he said, so he said, and sometimes tough love is the very essence of mercy. So, for instance, someone who's wise, who punishes a child who plays with a match, even if it cries, and they don't worry about this crying because they're fearing it being burned. So being tough on the ego is not from hatred or mistreatment. So someone from Warden said, is reading the books of the folk and pondering them and studying them, does it need permission and ijazah? And he said, I love to listen to their being explained more than I love to read them by myself. He said there's benefit in an explanation and reading it as well. And also, however, if there's a permission or an ijazah, that's more likely to bring benefit and to understand its meanings in a broader way. And he said, and that's more beneficial. However, every Muslim that studies these books, they will derive benefit, particularly if they study these books with a good motivation of love and yearning and a desire to ascend and to travel that path. There's a brother from Muhammad Omar Hassan. He said, how does one know whether the Shaykh is pleased with the seeker? And he said, by your true love from your heart and your being pleased with what he invites and that to which he guides and to which he leads, and then you're seeking, and also by your being well pleased with Allah as your Lord and Muhammad as the Messenger, and you're truly desiring to follow and emulate. These are signs of their good pleasure. May Allah give us Allah's good pleasure, the pleasure of the shuyukh, the pleasure of parents, the pleasure of the elders, or the pleasure of the pious. None of these are sought except as a means to Allah's good pleasure and the pleasure of His Messenger. And he recited the verse, and Allah and His Messenger are more deserving that they please them if they are indeed believers. And he recited a dua and said, but the secret of Fatiha ala Hadrat Nabi al-Masih sallallahu wa barakatuh wa alifat.
وأم آمنة من السعودية تقول إن لم يتسنى الإنسان أن يداوم على ساعة كاملة ذكر واحتلال لازم فكانت ربع إلى نصف ساعة. هل هذا قدر كافي؟
So someone mentioned that they persistently read an hour of dhikr. He said, may Allah give you and I tawfiq in learning and having a sincere intention. He said, if a person avid to do even 15 minutes or 30 minutes, that's a good beginning. And then if they're true, that will be a means of the beneficence being broader for him. And we ask Allah for aids. So there's a brother who asked about how to how to encourage modesty, and he's in a place where there's not much modesty. He said by mentioning those pious ladies, the mothers of believers, and the women of the companions, mention their praising them much, and mentioning their shyness and their modesty and the benefit of that in this world and the barzakh and the hereafter. He said mentioning that much and praying to Allah much, may Allah take them all by the hands. He mentioned that you mentioned that he mentioned a question in the morning, and he said the way to attain all of those is having a true turning to Allah and a true aspiration, and studying the books of the folk and asking Allah and requesting from Him. Those are means to attain all of the degrees and stations and praiseworthy attributes. May Allah take us all by the hand. Alhamdulillah.